Welcome back to Former Feds and Friends, where former government employees react to sci-fi, fantasy, animated films, and all things nerdy, wonky, and awesome. I'm Madeline Valturo. I'm a former stabilization advisor with the U.S. government, and today I'm going to throw you right over to my co-host, Wes Rist, to host this week's episode. But before I do that, I want to remind you all to please subscribe, press that like button, and ring that bell to get notifications. It really does help the channel at this early stage. And now, Wes, over to you.
My name is Wes Rist. I was a atrocity prevention policy advisor at the U.S. State Department, and I am here with a very long-time friend, Tracey Begley, who was a colleague of mine in the Office of Global Criminal Justice, where she worked on international law issues. Tracey, would you like to share a little bit about who you are and what you did when you were a Fed?
Sure. Thanks, Wes. Really happy to be here. So I worked in the Office of Global Criminal Justice, which basically tries to hold people who have committed war crimes accountable through different policy mechanisms and supporting other states that are trying to prosecute individuals or international courts or transitional justice. We were really trying to help support accountability for people who have done bad things.
As I'm sure those of you who are watching know, the new Superman movie, directed by James Gunn, came out 2025, is a very interesting one because it dives right in, and we're going to do the same. There's no backstory, there's no spaceship being shot to Earth. You just get Superman in the middle of a fight, and it turns out he got involved in a conflict between two countries, one of which is Barovia, and the other which is Jahaanpur. Superman got involved in stopping a war, and we'll come back to whether or not that's an accurate portrayal of what he did. And now some random other superhero with supervillain, we don't know, the Hammer of Barovia, makes a specific allegation that Superman was violating the country of Baravia's sovereignty. And that gets us into the first thing we'll kind of look at, which is the United States government's reaction to all of this.
My friends, is the most powerful being on planet Earth. Ultraman. Check this out. The engineer, the former special operative whose blood I infused with microscopic machines called nanites. And of course, you're familiar with my flying armored forces, the Raptors. Altogether, they're an unstoppable force we call Planet Watch. More than
Planet Watch. So this is basically his new force.
If you were advising, the person who's making this decision, private entity comes in and says, I have this thing that can protect you against next generation threats. How do those decisions get made?
This is sort of a very big industry, right? In the US and all over the world that we do. For the most part, we have the private sector that are creating and making weapons, but every country has certain obligations under international law as well. And there are obligations to make sure that any weapons that are being used are going to comply with obligations that they have that are going to be used in certain ways. I think this is particularly shocking because it looks like it's not totally clear. Are these people who are wearing some kind of suit who have all this really fascinating technology, or are these metahumans that he's cloned? And earlier we had seen Luther sort of operating the hammer by giving certain commands, quite remarkable, and also raises questions about how the weapons are being used and also who's responsible for them.
Command responsibility.
Exactly. Because if you have a soldier who's firing a weapon, that individual has certain responsibilities. That individual's commander also has certain responsibilities under international law, but also under U.S. domestic law.
The extremes of the laws that govern conflict are actually fairly well defined. We know what is appropriate and inappropriate behavior, what is legal and illegal behavior. The arguments happen in that gray space you were talking about, where it really is difficult, like legitimately, objectively difficult to figure out what's the right thing to do here, because there are competing interests.
And international humanitarian law, the law that applies during armed conflict, is also very permissive. It's very different from human rights law, which is really about protecting the individual. And NIHL does fundamentally, the idea is to protect people who are not participating, who aren't fighting. But there are also a lot of things that law allows, and it does allow for civilians to be killed in very certain circumstances and under very certain rules.
It's always worth remembering, because we think of these now as the Geneva Conventions, the 1949 conventions that were passed after World War II. But going back to the 1800s when they were created, the intent was to protect military commanders in their operations, not to protect civilians. Like the reason
we only got the civilian protections after World War II and after the horrific civilian casualties.
So you want the Defense Department to hire your metahumans to take down the Kryptonian?
After Superman acted with violence against our Barovian allies, I think it'd be worth considering.
Big Blue stopped the war. Naive.
General Flagg makes the point of he stopped a war.
It's a good name, General Flagg.
Yeah.
I just do what I can not to be splashed.
So we're gonna lock up all metahumans now.
The other metahumans aren't going off half-cocked, interfering in foreign affairs.
Admittedly, I'm not comfortable. With a being from another planet as dangerous as him on the loose. Without solid proof of malicious intent, it's just not worth the risk.
Did you have experiences like this, Wes, when you were at the State Department? Did you hear about these sorts of interactions?
There were definitely not so much individuals, but groups definitely who did their best to try and make the situation better. And as a former civil society representative myself, who worked outside of government before I joined government, I have nothing but respect for those efforts and believe they are an essential part of that work.
Yeah.
It is also true that sometimes in the really sticky part of diplomacy, where you, as the saying goes, you don't get to make peace with your friends, you have to make peace with your enemies. We negotiate with bad guys, and people, organizations, entities deciding that they should have a say in how those processes happen is understandable, is expected, I think is overall to the benefit of humanity at large, but can make a diplomat's job tougher.
Certainly, and I think, of course, in a democracy, it's essential that you have an active civil society that also is able to access government.
Well, and I think it's essential as well for those civil society organizations to be able to hold their governments to account if they think that they are making bad choices. I've been in the situation of being the person on the side of the table saying, you got to do better, this is not enough. And then when I joined government, people that I worked with, that I was friends with, it was my job to listen to them tell me, you're not doing enough. You got to do better.
Recently, you've come under a lot of fire for what some might. It's a lot. Today, the Secretary of Defense said he was going to look into your actions in Barovia.
I mean, come on, my actions? I stopped a war.
Maybe.
Not maybe. I did.
Okay.
Sounds like he's going to need a little briefing from some experts before he talks to the media.
People underestimate how difficult standing up in front of a journalist who knows what they're doing is.
After I stopped the war, I went to see Gurkhos. I flew him out to the desert, and I placed him against a cactus.
So, torture?
No, not torture. Its spikes were like not even that big.
What did you say?
I told him that if he ever messes with Jahaanpur again, he'll have to personally answer to me.
Right. So he did not use his diplomatic skills. He used his, not the carrot, but the stick.
Yes.
Illegally entered a country, inserting yourself in the middle of an
No.
incredibly
Hold on a
heated
minute.
geopolitical
Hold on a
situation.
second.
Siding with a nation, Jahaanpur, which historically has not been a friend
Jahaanpur
to the
has
US, against
changed.
a nation that's technically our ally, and then threatened to murder their head of state.
First of all, whether or not Jahaanpur is an imperfect country does not give another nation the right to
Yes, but the
invade it.
Barovian government maintains they're freeing the Jahaanpurians from a tyrannical regime.
Yes, you know as well as I do that the Barovian government is not
I
well-intentioned.
think that's almost certainly the case, but do I know that? No, I don't.
Right. She is pointing to what are the facts? We need facts. We need to know what actually happened.
He's operating from a sense of responsibility, and she's trying to operate from a sense of accountability. Superman is arguing, I was doing a moral good to prevent the death of individuals. And Lois is asking about the legality of his actions. How does that interplay happen in decision makers, in international law? As we're recording this, UNGA High Level Week is
Yeah.
happening, and we're
Yes.
watching all kinds of stuff about conflicts that are happening around the
Yeah.
world right
And
now.
there are so many conflicts all over the world where we know that hundreds of people are dying, civilians are dying every day. There's this doctrine called the responsibility to protect. And it was this legal doctrine that was coalesced around basically what Clark Kent is saying. You know, we know that people are going to die, therefore we have an obligation to intervene. Now, it's never that simple. I remember as a teenager getting interested in international affairs and thinking, you know, why doesn't the military just go in and stop these people? You know, and then my older brother saying, oh, so you want to just go and send the army to another country and go have them kill other people? You know, and I thought, oh, okay, right. It's never sort of that straightforward. They get really into the sovereignty issue here as well.
Yeah.
Sovereignty is basically, you know, a country's right to govern its own territory without any influence from the exterior, without any sort of invasion from other countries.
It's actually a basic premise of the UN Charter. It's built right into our post-World War II structure.
And the UN Charter has created very narrow grounds under which a state can use force against another state, basically in self-defense, could be in collective self-defense. And there are lots of different legal interpretations that have spun off from that in regard to sort of how broad that spectrum is.
This has to be BS.
Well, they couldn't be mistaken.
Oh, no.
Well, that sounds very disturbing, Lex.
You have the footage?
Yes.
Let's take a look.
Hey, Coronel.
We love you more than heaven, our son.
We have searched the universe for a home where you can do the most good and live out Krypton's truth.
That place is Earth.
I don't get it. What's bad about that?
The people there are simple and profoundly confused. Weak of mind and spirit and body. Lord over the planet as the last son of Krypton.
Right. So here we find out that Superman's parents actually wanted him to come to Earth to take over.
Dispatch of anyone unable or unwilling to serve you, Kale. Take as many wives as you can, so your genes and Krypton's might and legacy will live on in this new frontier.
Do us proud, our beloved son. Rule without mercy.
What about all the kind acts Superman has performed over the years, saving countless lives?
No, he's grooming us.
Right. So Luthor is convincing everyone that he's known this the whole time, which he hasn't.
To what extent does social media have an impact now on conflict, on these issues in the world? Disinformation campaigns are real, and governments are using them in very intentional ways.
Yeah. I mean, this is a huge multifaceted issue, and social media plays a tremendous role in instigating violence, right? In misinformation, about placing blame on certain groups of people or certain individuals in an attempt to incite violence against those individuals. It also plays a role I've had discussions with social media companies as well about, you know, the types of content that they have that might show civilians or might, you know, show people who are detained in an armed conflict. And there are certain regulations around that too. But there are also going to be family members who are looking for those individuals. And you're also going to have freedom of speech and freedom of expression related rights. And then you're also probably going to have evidence that shows up that, you know, as evidence that could be used. And maybe it shouldn't be content that is accessible to everyone, but maybe there's content that social media companies should be preserving and then providing to competent jurisdictions, to courts that are able to use that evidence, or to prosecutors. And also social media can be extremely helpful for helping people access evacuation routes and information about what they need to take with them or where they need to go. But I think it's so much about, you know, individuals knowing what accounts they trust and where that information is coming from. And I think that that's getting lost, or has been lost, right? That you just get inundated with information, and okay, you don't know who this individual is, but you're seeing it all over the place, and all these people that you do know are posting this, and somehow that becomes the reality, and that becomes the truth, and it can be very hard for individuals to distill that, and that's why it's also really important for companies to have rules around that.
Lex, he just told you the portal was destroyed.
The dimensional aperture is still there, which we can open remotely, so
It is not safe.
we can close the aperture later by inputting the coordinates, correct?
Theoretically.
Great. If we can't find him, we'll need to draw him out.
But Lex, that could tear a dimensional ridge into the surrounding area.
This is something you think I don't know. Superman won't be able to ignore that. Now we know where he'll be next.
If Lex were a government, and that's, a whole question about how big multinationals are getting, that they act with the power as if they were governments, but Lex created that rift to bring Superman to Metropolis so he could target him.
That is true. And now he has ended up killing, we don't even know, but let's assume tens of thousands of civilians and causing so much damage to civilian infrastructure and hospitals and transportation systems. I mean, that is completely disproportionate. Yeah. So there's this other principle that when a military conducts an attack, whatever damage it's causing to civilians has to be proportionate to the military advantage. And the military advantage has to be greater than the civilian harm that's being caused.
Which is back to our initial point. This isn't easy stuff. It's not just a numbers game. There's not an equation that you plug this into and get a right answer. This is a judgment call that can be very difficult.
Yeah, and there are tools that militaries use to help them estimate how much collateral damage there will be, right? Depending on the size of the bomb, depending on what civilian infrastructure is nearby. But yes, at the end of the day, I mean, typically you would have a military lawyer who provides an assessment and analysis, and then you have a commander who makes a decision. And that is happening quickly.
So I was able to connect with our contact at Barovia. Luther's been selling arms to Gergos for pennies on the dollar for years. Why, you ask?
I do ask why.
He did it in exchange for half of Jahaanpur.
And now we get the whole King Luther reveal. He's
right.
He's
gonna get some of the territory.
Documents chronicling Baravia's agreement to cede half of the country to Lex Luthor once the invasion is complete.
He wants to make himself king.
King?
King.
Why the hell would Lex want half a desert?
His cultish acolytes believe he's going to create a technologically advanced utopia.
Utopia?
There's a profit factor as well. I mean, the petroleum deposits alone are worth multiples of his investment.
And the money.
And the money.
So,
which that's the one thing I found strange. Why would Perry say, "Why does someone want a desert?" Because that's where most of the oil is.
Right.
Of course, that's why he wants the desert. That's where the oil is.
All of it seems to be geared towards stopping Superman from standing in the way of the Baravian invasion, Chief.
Call me Perry, kid. Post the story fast.
I do want to make a point about this right here. The importance of journalists in getting news out in the middle of conflict, in the middle of a crisis, and how much we at the State Department and government officials rely on that, the importance of good journalism.
Yeah, so much of our reporting and recommendations that we made were based on credible reporting from news sources that had very good access to information and were present in places where like you or I or the embassy that was nearby would never have access to that. And journalists play an extremely important role about getting information out, and they often are really putting themselves in danger as well.
Now, Angela, as planned, fill his lungs and kill the son of a bitch.
Now, it's kind of muddied because Lex is obviously a private actor, but what do the laws of armed conflict say about targeted assassinations?
So you could certainly, in armed conflict, if there's an individual who is participating in the conflict, you can attack that individual, but you can't use weapons that are going to cause what they call unnecessary and superfluous harm. So there have been certain types of bullets that have been banned, certain types of gases, like this, it appears, right? This type of nanotechnology that it appears to be essentially trying to suffocate him. So the soldiers are there, the tanks are rolling. They've certainly crossed the border, right? They've in the sovereign territory of another country.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, kid. Superman couldn't make it. So you got an upgrade.
But now the Green Lanterns
and
are here.
You can see this as like the peacekeeping force, basically, that's just shown up.
Right. So interestingly, this also isn't great, right? I mean, what is happening to these soldiers that they're using their superpowers to fling away?
Yeah,
right?
and they were running away, and now Green Lantern is flipping tanks over on them and the like.
Right.
The government gave me the authority to kill you. If not today, then tomorrow.
There's also that very cathartic movie moment of the bad guy actually getting held to account, which so rarely happens in our field.
Yes, and so quickly too.
Yeah. I mean, the things we've worked on, it's been years, if not decades.
Yeah, decades to find the bad person and then decades to have a case against them. And
this has been an incredible opportunity to kind of parse a lot of these issues with you through this, Tracey, and I really appreciate the insights you shared. I'm curious if you have any last thoughts.
Look, I think for me, what I like about the Superman movie, I like the sort of neatness of the good and the bad, but the complexity and all of these technologies that are getting used that now we think, whoa, can you imagine using this or that? But that's coming down the line, right? Who knows, the cloning and the being able to program these clones so that you can operate from some safe distance away. I mean, in some ways that's already happening in some regards.
We're seeing that with drones.
And the nanotechnology and this alternate detention site, right? I mean, a lot of these issues already come up in many parts of the world. So I think they've really pulled in some real world issues and civilians being involved or not being involved and being targeted into a very sort of neat and dramatic movie.
With that, thank you for joining us. I hope that you found something interesting in this. There will be some follow-on shorts, some detailed, hopefully podcasts and episodes that we'll come back with and follow up on some of these themes. And I'm sure many of these themes will show up in additional episodes that we talk about. I do want to mention a few quick things. One, I am told that I'm supposed to mention liking, subscribing, and all of that fun stuff that YouTube wants you to do to make sure that you find out when we've got things. One disclaimer, our guests bring their professional expertise and knowledge to this, but they're reacting in real time. So if we get something wrong, mention it in the comments, ask us about it, or if it's unclear, tell us what you didn't understand, and we'll follow up and do our best to provide more clarity. All right. Thank you all. Peace out.
Yeah.